First question, will someone from the Election Commission be available to speak about the new law to community groups?
That would be me. And I promise I'll get better as I go. I tell my poll workers, you don't want to come to training on Monday, because I'm always a little stiff on Monday, but by Friday, great class. But yeah.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to go out to the community and inform them like you're doing tonight. That's very helpful. The next question, can someone who has a history of conviction for a felony ever vote in Arkansas?
They can if, once they've completed all the requirements to be, and this isn't obviously my expertise, but my understanding is that if you've been paroled and you've completed that parole, or if you've been released from prison, then yes, you can apply to vote. So it's not once a felon, always a felon. Once you've completed your entire sentence, then you're eligible to vote again.
Thank you. How much does an Arkansas non-driver's license and fee card cost? I think you mentioned
$5 is what it costs. Now, I don't know if you noticed on the ID card that was passed around, it says specifically on that card that its only use is for voting. So if you needed another form of ID for something else, that card would not suffice for that. It's only for voting purposes only. So yes, $5 is what it costs to go to the revenue office and get Arkansas State ID.
This question is coming from me, not from any of you. There's this box in the back that has an iPad in it. Tell us about that.
That is, last year, the county clerk's office and my office, yeah, if you want to bring it up here, I'll be glad to show everybody. We purchased voting tablets, electronic voting tablets, and I always say this wrong because everyone gets the opinion that you can actually vote on this, but this actually replaces those blue books. So when you go in to vote on election day, and our poll workers have those giant blue books that they've divided A through M, M through Z, and it doesn't matter how we divide the books up, one line is always longer than the other. We shift them around all during the day, still, one line, always longer. This replaces that in the fact that we no longer have to divide our books up, and it pulls up every registered voter in the county at one polling place. Now, it's designed to prevent a voter from being at the wrong polling place voting at that polling place. But what it does do, if, say, for instance, and we have this happen quite a bit, rodeo grounds in Springdale is one of our early vote sites, and it's very popular, and a lot of people take advantage of it and they vote there. Now, they voted in 2012, and now it's 2014. And they're going to show up at the rodeo grounds on election day, and they're going to be like, I voted here, I know I did. Well, you probably early voted here at one point, but that may not be your regular polling place. What this tablet does is, because it has the whole database for the county, it pulls you up, and if your address is correct, we can send you automatically to the correct polling place. We don't have to try and call the county clerk, try and get a hold of her, and all 56 polling places are calling the county clerk with the same problem. So we hope that that will alleviate a lot of that problem. But basically, it has a nice feature where it can scan your driver's license, but it doesn't have to do that. You can search by name, and I'll pull myself up, and it pulls up, just like that, my voting history. So no longer flipping through those books. Now, if you have a really long name, or if you have hyphens in your name, or if you have anything like that, you can search by typing in the first 3 letters of the last name, the first 3 letters of the first name, and it pulls up all those voters. And it's a lot quicker. I know my poll workers at the end of the day would complain their shoulders ached, because they would sit there, turn that book around, have the voter sign, turn it back around all day long. These will sit actually on like a little lazy Susan, they'll spin around. So, but will process our voters a lot faster. And if you want to, we can. You can actually, we could pass this around or you can look at it, pull yourself up and check your voter information on it. This is set for the school election, however, so if you pull yourself up, don't freak out and like, I don't vote there. It's set for the school election, and not every polling place was open for the school election.
But you cannot change your address on this, is that correct?
You cannot.
Okay.
No. You still have to call the county clerk's office. So if you've moved before the election, call the clerk's office. We will download all the information on these tablets for the May primary on the Saturday. So before the election. So if you call Thursday, Friday morning, we'll be able to get your information changed. Then you'll go to the correct polling place, and they'll be able to pull you up and not have to call the clerk's office.
Well, that leads me to our next question. That's very good. Thank you for sharing that. It's been fun to use that at the polls.
Yeah, I hope everybody got an opportunity to use it in November.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, here's a question that you and I talked a little bit about with regards to our student population in particular, but this has to do with everybody. Do you have to change your registration if you move?
Yes. Anytime you move, even if you move from in your same neighborhood, from Street A to Street B, you must change your address. Even apartment buildings, if you changed one apartment building to the next, it's right next door, you have to change your address. It's so important. That's one of the reasons why sometimes we see a lag in time for when voters come in and we process voters, is because we're having to call because they have a change of address. And the way it works, we're not capable of making address changes at the polls on election day. We have to call the clerk's office, and she has a limited number of lines. I have 56 polling places open that are calling. Other voters are calling in. So that's one thing you can do if you move. Call the clerk's office and change. All it takes is a phone call. She can change it over the phone for you.
Very helpful. This is a question that is interesting. How will you be able to tell how many people needed a voter ID but did not present with one? Is there some sort of record keeping there?
We will know how many people voted a provisional ballot at the end of the election because they didn't have ID. We won't know in advance how many people actually needed. I can tell you as of today, Washington County has not issued, other than Michael Bublé's card that's going around here, has not issued any of the voter ID cards. Now, that's not to say closer to May, we won't get people calling with it, but they've not issued any of those cards as of today.
Okay, so we'll stay tuned for that one.
Yes,
okay.
And we'll have a better knowledge of how things go after the May primary, because we'll have provisional ballots, and we'll know for sure on that.
Well, speaking of the May 20th election, what is the last date to get a voter ID before that election?
Well, the law didn't specify, so we are anticipating that if you woke up election day and you didn't meet any of those criteria of not having a driver's license, not having a student ID, military ID, passport, any of those things, but you had your birth certificate and you had a secondary form, you could go to the clerk's office, theoretically, election day, and get that voter ID card issued from the county clerk's office. So we don't know. But the law didn't specify that. Now, you do have to be registered to vote 30 days before the election. So if you don't have ID and are not registered to vote, it wouldn't do you any good to go and get that ID on election day.
You just know what the next question is then. What kind of information does a person who is registering to vote receive about the correct voter identification?
Well, what kind of information do they receive? Right now, when you register to vote, you are mailed a card that lists your polling place on it. It lists all the different offices you can vote for, and I'm not sure, that would be a county clerk question, if that is going to specify that you need an ID on it. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, we can certainly take some of our brochures to the county clerk. They use our voter guides
Yes.
very often. We'd be happy to furnish information like that for the county clerk.
I know that when they send out the voter information, it's a program that's already written. You know, they're basically just sending it in, and that would have had to been updated from the Secretary of State's office. So I don't know, and I don't do that part of it, so I'm not sure on that one.
We'll look into that then.
Yeah.
If your ID has an address on it, does it need to match your voter registration?
It does not, and that's really key, because a lot of times, like I said, maybe you've moved and you didn't update your information at the DMV, and so that part doesn't match. What we're looking for on your photo ID is your name, and it can be a variation of your name. If your name is William, but you've always gone by Bill, and it says Bill on your driver's license, we're not going to turn you away election day and not allow you to vote. The address isn't anything we're looking for on your ID. What we're looking for is that face matching with the face standing in front of us and the name. That's why we ask you to state your address. Because then when we pull you up in this little tablet, when you state that, that's when we're actually looking to compare that the two match.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you. What about provisional ballots for absentee ballots if they forget something?
That, those provisional ballots, when they're set aside, are, because they were an absentee ballot, don't count. And so they're not a true provisional ballot in the essence like when you vote election day. So when you vote an absentee ballot, because typically say we're sending it overseas, and we have to certify the election in 10 days for a primary election, there's not an opportunity to send something and get that back for an absentee ballot. That's not the same as an election day ballot. And that's something that the Election Commission, not my level, the Election Commission will look at in regards to absentees, because we do keep records of those absentee ballots that don't count because of lack of signature, birth date, and those type of things. So we do have those records. So yeah.
In general, what % of provisional ballots are counted?
I would say less than 30% are counted. The typical provisional ballot that we get, it's a low number. I see you're like, oh gosh. Most of the provisional ballots we get are voters who are not registered to vote, but knew that but for some reason thought they still were registered to vote, or they vote at the wrong polling place in the wrong precinct. You know, we give the opportunity to the voter when we call the clerk's office and we say, well, you're actually registered to vote at a different polling place, the opportunity to go to that polling place. Not every voter takes opportunity to do that. And it's a really sad situation that we run into, especially if you come into the polls at 7:25 and you've been told that your polling place is across town. That's why we encourage everyone to go to the Voter View website, make sure your address is correct, and then if it's not correct, call the clerk's office and change it. So it's so important for the voter to be an active participant in that part of the process too.
It's a major point.
Yeah. So
in nursing home, does each resident need to request absentee ballots, or will a letter from the administrator be sufficient for ID?
Each voter requests their own absentee ballot, and then the letter would be specific to each voter. So yes, so we wouldn't accept a generic letter, say from Butterfield, that lists all residents that live there. No, it would have to be each letter specific to each voter. So yes.
Thank you. What do homeless people do about an address?
We've had that come up a couple of times, and they can list as an address either like the homeless shelter, if they visit the homeless shelter. They can list essentially if someone will accept mail for them, they can list that address as their mailing address. And they do, I know the clerk's office does their best to make sure that voter, if they are homeless and are registering to vote, that they do get that voter registration card. So yeah, so they make every effort to make sure. But your best bet if you were homeless is to just put your place of residence as one of the local homeless shelters, or a friend if they're willing to let that be their address too.
Okay. When a poll worker asks for name, address, and date of birth, must the voter answer? And what happens if the reply is simply that the ID info is correct?
Okay. We are instructed, and the law requires us to ask the voter to state that information. And for the voter to reply with the information that we've asked. If the voter refuses to answer the information back to us, then we would vote them a provisional ballot and then kind of handle it on the back end of the election, so to speak. But yeah, that's I guess 6 years ago, it used to be that you could just confirm your birth date, and then the law changed, and you had to state your birth date out loud. So we know people are sensitive to that. Our poll workers are trained to ask that information, and then the voter, when they're doing the training, the response is the voter then will reply with that information. And if they don't want to state that information out loud, then we can vote them a provisional ballot.
Okay, another question along these lines. If there is a language barrier, a difference in language, how do our poll workers handle that?
Well, we've done our best. We don't have everything in dual language, and right now it's not required. The Secretary of State doesn't require us to have ballots in Spanish or to have any of our literature in Spanish. And we've seen a lot of times when voters come in who maybe don't speak English, can bring someone with them, and that person can then assist them to vote. We've also reached out to the school districts to get ESL students as volunteers at the polling places so that they can help us with the translation. And we're really open and looking for ways to better communicate with our voters who don't maybe speak English.
Okay, thank you. This is our last question, and I think this emphasizes the absentee ballot again. Must a photo ID be included with the application for an absentee ballot, with the application for an absentee
Okay.
ballot?
When you apply for an absentee ballot, you don't send anything in. The voter statement is what you will receive. You'll receive in the mail from the clerk's office. You'll receive your actual ballot and a voter statement. That voter statement is what you fill out. When you mail all of that back in, that's when you have to mail in a photo ID, or for an absentee ballot, it doesn't have to be a photo ID. It can be a copy of your electric bill, your gas bill, a bank statement. Please, though, and you would be surprised at what we get. We get actual bank statements. Please don't send us your actual bank statement. We've actually gotten a couple of times an actual driver's license in there before. Don't send us that. It just needs to be a copy of your, probably not your bank statement's the best one, but if it's just that top part with your name and your address, we don't need any of the other information, but a utility bill. So absentee ballot doesn't have to be a photo ID. It can be, and military, they don't have to send anything back in with theirs other than their voter statement.
Very good. Well, you have answered a lot of questions, given us a ton of information. We are very grateful for all you do to keep our voters informed and to treat them all with a lot of dignity and a lot of respect, and we get the job done. So thank you very, very much. Now, before we conclude, I'd like to put in a plug for our next program that the League of Women Voters will have. And Joyce Hale, League member, board member, community organizer, would like to come and inform you about this event.
Thank you. It's always nice to share the fact that the League is very open to a lot of different topics. And I think even though that we've had this wonderful program on the voting, we look at many other issues, a lot of environmental or social justice issues. And the one that we're going to be focusing on in March, and that's March the 9th, and it's a little different in that we're going to be doing this on a Sunday afternoon. The reasoning behind this is that we want to especially invite the senior citizens of the area. The topic is going to be on fraud that targets senior citizens. And unfortunately, this is a growing problem. We have a panel that are very experienced on this topic. We're going to have a lot of literature, and we're also going to have packets of materials that will be taken back to senior centers and to residential retirement facilities, and hopefully get the word out on a long-term basis. What we're going to be doing is starting a conversation, but we need to see it carry on over a long period of time if we're going to have a real impact on this problem of fraud. It comes in many forms, and it's very tricky, and even when you think you can avoid these things, you'll be amazed at how it can snag you. So we hope that all of you will be paying attention to the fact that this is on March 9th, that's Sunday afternoon, starting at 2:30. It will take place at St. Paul's Church facility, the Parish Hall, thank you. And we will really welcome everyone to come. It'll probably be an hour and a half or 2 hours, but we expect to see a lot of people interested in this problem. Thank you very much.
Joyce, do you have to be elderly to attend?
No, and in fact, after we started trying to really target our invitations to some of the senior members of the area, we realized that equally as important, and maybe as more important, is for the younger people who are the children of parents, so that they will be aware that some of these problems are going on, and particularly where the children can help on some of these electronic problems, so that we can avoid that sort of dilemma. So no, this is for all ages, and maybe those young people better watch their inheritances.
Good point. Thank you so much, Joyce. I just want to thank everybody in the audience for attending. Rita has one more thing that she'd like to share with you. She's in the back.
I just want to say that we have a good number of brochures, brochures on the voting here. And if you were, especially if you represent an organization, we'd like for you to take some back with you.
Thank you very much. Get them, take them, distribute them. We want everybody to be informed, and we want to make sure that everybody's vote counts. All of yours, all of your friends, all of your community members. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We're so glad that you made the effort tonight to become a better informed voter as well, and that you'll spread the word. Thanks for coming.
Start out.
just going to cycle right on through the hours. You got it.
Thank you very much. Well, it was a good vote last night. I came late and I was outside. I didn't stay for the actual vote. I had to get somewhere else.
It would have been hard for anybody to take a chance on voting against it.
They'd have been thrown down the steps. Well, that's good. That's just kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that all came together. And with the Waltons putting that money in, it kind of made it a no-brainer.